Hey guys and girls, welcome back to YYC Designz Custom RC Creations. I am, of course, Twist. We haven't seen a lot of boat videos lately. It's summer, guys are looking for boats. Or at least summer's coming really soon and guys are looking for boats. So as y'all may or may not know, I am doing two boats. They are going to be representative of 50-foot cabin cruisers. And I'm doing them for two very special people in my life. Two young guys. My nephews. And I want them to be really super kick-ass boats. Well, the problem has been I ran into a creative block about 2 months ago. And I have since overcome that creative block, and I now know how I'm going to do what I'm going to do to these boats to get where I want to be on them so that I can finish them. I was having issues with how I was going to put in the planking. Now, this is a metal plate back here. It's about 18 gauge, same as the transom. It's a little warm right now, so I'm not going to touch it too much. It's 18 gauge steel. Fairly heavy for an RC vehicle. Not so bad for a boat because the buoyancy does overcome the weight, and as you probably all know, boats have a lot less work to do pushing themselves through water than, say, a crawler does going upgrade because of the friction. A lot less friction going on top of water than there is on top of a dirt surface. So each of these boats will be twin screws. In other words, two motors, yeah? So the deal is, I have no problem with any of that. I was having issue with how I'm going to plank them. Now, I've only ever made wood boats before, and I wanted to make them metal because of this channel. So I know it will work. I've seen it done full scale. So if a full-scale metal boat works, ergo, a scaled-down version should work. These are a scale model of a 50-foot cabin cruiser. They are down, I believe, I'm right in and around a 1/18th to a 1/20th of full size. So I know it's going to work. And now I just want to make them really sexy. But how do I put the planking on? I can't put in a bunch of steel bulkheads to attach planking to, otherwise the boat will be way too heavy. And the ideas that work on a 1-to-1 cruiser are not going to work on a scale cruiser. They're just not gonna. Okay? Mostly because, well, let's face it, big monster gas engines are a hell of a lot more powerful than what we're going to be able to put in these things for RCs. So they have to brace them and bulk them up to be able to handle those big motors. I don't have that issue. Okay? All I really have is the issue of getting my planking right. So I came up with a brilliant idea the other day. I'm not really breaking my own rules about plastic if I, in fact, fiberglass the hull and fiberglass other components on the upper deck, not just the main deck, or not just the lower deck, but what about the main deck and the fly bridge? I can add in fiberglass sides. I can do a lot of fiberglass work around a steel frame. I'm not breaking my own rules, and more importantly, I can give my nephews something that cannot be bought on the market, will last a lifetime for them. I hope these boats are around when I'm long dead and gone, and they ought be, because they're steel, yeah? And the fiberglass. Fiberglass doesn't rot, it doesn't mold, it doesn't mildew. It's all good on water, especially when you put the special water gel coats and that sort of thing on them, I can do that. As an auto body repair mechanic, I have no problem using any of those finishes. So that's the way I'm going to go with finishing them. So now I know how I'm going to do it. I thought, okay, they're not so sexy looking as I want them to be. So I have been going through boat pictures like crazy, motor yacht pictures, all kinds of stuff, and I have come up with some really cool far out features for these boats that I'm going to add on to them, and they are going to be kick-ass sexy. Let's explain a few over what y'all have seen in the last videos. A month and a half ago, I grant you, but they're still on our playlist. I invite you to go have a look at them, see how I've gotten to the point I am at now, and then see what I'm going to do. Okay? So let's have a close-up look, shall we? So some of the changes I made here on this was, you'll probably remember from the other video, the back of the transom was square. I have now since rounded this. It just gives it a more modern, sexier little look, I think, than having it just a square. Anybody can do a square, right? And this opens up a lot of different options down the line for design features and so on. For instance, when I go to put the deck here on the back of the transom, the diving deck, this opens up some different options. I can put like a nice little gate or so on across the back here, and I've got ideas, and y'all will see them come together as I go. So that you're just going to have to check a later video on, because it's not going to happen this video. But I've got some really cool ideas back here for the diving deck and how you, excuse me, how you will actually enter the boat itself if you were to enter the boat. And as you might have noticed here, I have also put an angle in the bottom of the transom. This happens to be a 38-degree angle, both sides, giving me a full keel chime, and I really like that look. The chime will be a third of the way up the keel and come along, hit the bow of the boat, and be even higher than that at the bow. So it'll give it a really nice chime line. And so that's the other changes I've gotten thus far. I have a few more today, which I'm going to add on here. Once I get those done, then of course I take keel number 2, and I will make keel number 2 very identical to it. It's not going to be exact, because as I say, it is physically impossible to copy it exactly. So each boat will always be a one-of, and each boy will get a very distinct boat, yet very similar. And I think that's fair, because, you know, they are, after all, brothers, so you don't want to have any family arguments going on there. So, yeah, what I do for one, I got to do for the other, and that's why I figured I'd make both boats almost as identical as I could. So, anyway, I will get some more done on this here, and, of course, I'll do keel number 2 for the other nephew, and whether it ends up on film, who knows. But either way, both boats will end up on video at some point throughout this whole series, so you'll get to see them both, because they're both going to progress at the same rate, be finished at the same rate. And albeit it's going to be a little late and a little beyond boat season, it's just because of we have to save up for parts. They're going to get them as Christmas presents. So that's kind of how fancy these are going to be. I'm going to be putting a lot of really cool shit into these two boats. So it's going to be a fun journey to watch these being built. Anyway, I will continue on with my plans here. Okay, so as promised, lots of changes here. You'll notice in the bow, big change. I got rid of the front frame, And the reason is because I initially made a mistake. Now, I went through and I watched a lot of YouTube videos and so on, and one thing I was really noticing was that my bow was more curved like a ship than a cabin cruiser. Yeah, it was just unbelievably different. And the other thing I realized is most cabin cruisers only have one anchor up front, not two. So the anchor will go in the same spot. Now I'm just being careful because this is still really hot after a lot of oxyacetylene welding, yeah? Excuse me, I have a little of the flux and smoke and stuff from the welding in my lungs. So please pardon my sniffles and my odd cough. Now that is where the front anchor will go. Alright, so it's not changing places, there's just going to be one. And you'll notice the curve here in the bow is decidedly sharper. It actually dropped the bow 2 inches if you were to turn the boat upside down. This part of the bow is now 2 inches lower than where it was. I wouldn't have been cutting the water real well with it. I would have actually ended up just plowing it more like a big ocean liner would. I also, as you may notice, curved the bow down slightly. Now that is also to help facilitate with the drive as it goes through the water. Like I said, I'm not a Navy guy, so I don't know all the proper terms, but I'll say it also aids in the way it cuts the water in the sharpness of the bow. And now, tilting it down, I notice is just a lot of things that the motor yachts do. I kind of think maybe if you're in the main cabin and you're driving your yacht or sailing it as the case may be, I kind of think maybe it helps you see the bow better because it drops it down as y'all go. So your line of sight from way back there on your bridge to here is aided by this slight downward curve, yet y'all can still see exactly where your bow is so you don't be running into stuff, right? So that's just my thinking. Now I can't prove it, and maybe some of y'all know better. If you do, please comment. Anyway, some more changes. I decided to go with a 1 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch framing here. I'll tell you that in just why I did that in just a minute. Added a couple more frames across the top, and of course on the back is the biggest change. As you notice now, I have rounded over the back edge, and that is purely aesthetics. It's to give it a more modern look. And of course now we have the diving deck out the back of the boat. It comes out exactly 4 inches. It is 11.5 inches wide. It overhangs the side of the boat 1/4 inch on each side at this point. Comes back to a total width across the back here of 10 inches. The yacht itself, of course, or the cabin cruiser itself, is 11 inches across, and it is 6 inches deep. So this is going to get underwater lighting, and of course the 2 screws will come out under here. They will not come out through the transom. Nothing comes out through the transom except the underwater lighting that I'm going to put in for the boys. So from here, now I'm going to have to start building in where I mount the ballast. Of course, the anchor up front here, the ballast, and back here I'm going to be designing in the motor and rigging mount. And of course, in the center by ballast, I mean this is where the battery and the electronics and all that will go. It will be accessible from the upper deck, from the main cabin. The main cabin will lift off, and that way you can access all your electronics down here in the bowels of the boat. So I'm trying to back up far enough here to fit this all in. Now, of course, it is a total length of 47 inches now, so just shy of the 4 foot mark, and it is just over 1 foot from gunnel to keel. So there we have the new design of the double cabin cruiser build. Both cabin cruisers will be built to this design. So, because I got to keep the boats equal for the same for the boys to make sure it stays equal. There's never any bickering and bitching that your boat is better than mine, yours does this better than mine, or none of that shit. They're the same straight across, yeah? But now I got to make the other hull match this hull. And as you know, it is the old way where the bow is curved so steeply, and if you go back into the videos you can see it. Or actually, I can just turn around and skip by my junk pile and show you this one. As you can see here, the bow is much, much straighter. There's very little rake to it at all, yeah? So I have actually, what I was saying is this point here is now actually 2 full inches shallower. That is how much rake I actually put into the bow on my new design. I think it's going to work way better. I think it's going to cut through the water better. It's just going to sail better and be a much quicker boat overall. So now the reason behind using the 1-inch steel and the 1/2-inch tubing back here. I wanted a little weight up front, mostly to offset the weight that's going to be closer to the back of the ship. Now there's going to be a lot back here with 2 motors, dual ESCs and all the electronics and all that jazz. So rather than go with just the standard 1/2-inch square tubing, 1/16 inner wall, cut in half, shaped, very light stuff. Whereas 1 1/4 inch wide, 1/8 inch thick, it's a little bit beefier and will help offset the weight. You're going to hear some pinging coming down on top of my roof of the shop right now because we got just a little sprinkle falling. So no, we're not in any danger or nothing. We just have a little rainfall right now. Nothing to worry about. It's actually just shy of 30 degrees here today, which is in the low 90s to our American brothers and sisters. So it's been an absolutely twist-friendly day. I love the heat. It just cannot get hot enough for me. Anyhow, the reason why going with the thicker stuff and going with the 1/2-inch tube is I am no longer going to plank the boats in aluminum. I decided against it just because of all of the abuse a boat takes while it's out of the water, yeah? Or even hitting deadheads and things like that in the water. And I want to give it positive buoyancy, and I want to know that the thing is really, really going to be buoyant. And instead of filling the thing with insulated foam, I've decided I am going to go with a very thin Sitka spruce plywood planking and fiberglass, and then aqua gel to get the final coat and final finish on the boat. So I'm not breaking my rules. I use wood all the time, even in the crawlers. That's how I carve out the motors and all of that to make them look realistic, and to hide the electronic motors that we use. I carved them all out of basswood, and so when you open the hood, you're looking at a 6-liter diesel in the case of Miss Voodoo, but it's carved out of basswood. And so I carve it all in the little shop, and I carve out the motor and all the necessary bits to make it look realistic, and that hides the electronic stuff, but it makes the vehicle or the crawler just that much more realistic. Same deal here. I'm not breaking my own rules if I use Sitka spruce plywood. Now, Sitka spruce plywood is quite often used in covering aircraft. My father, who is gone now, unfortunately. I lost my best friend and my mentor, my teacher, and my dad all in one when my pop passed away, and we were very close. But he was an airplane guy. He in fact even built his own Starduster 1 aircraft. I encourage you to go Google one and see what they look like. They're a beautiful little biplane along the same line as a Pitt Special. Just a gorgeous plane. For 25 years this thing tied up the garage at home when I was a kid, and he built this plane in the garage, and it is now on display at the Shell Aero Museum here in Calgary up at McCall Field. And it's red and white, has a Canadian maple leaf on the fuselage. That was my paint design. And thankfully, my father decided to honor me by using my paint design on the aircraft. He painted it like that. And if you see a Starduster 1 at either the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology or the Shell Aero Museum here in Calgary, and it is nicknamed Old Joe, and it is CF Old Joe, or sorry, CF Joe. That is the plane that my father, Joe Hiltz, built from scratch. And I'm very proud of him and that aircraft. It's a beautiful legacy for him. And he donated it to SAIT to teach others how to build aircraft, and they use it to test engines and all sorts of things up there. So anyway, that is where I got my training from, and our history lesson for this episode. Y'all probably get tired of me going on with the little bits of history and stuff, kind of like welding. I don't know if y'all know how far back oxyacetylene welding goes. It is a second form of welding, the first one being forge welding, when you take two pieces of metal and stick them in a fire and bang them together with a rock and forge them into one. The first form of welding. Oxyacetylene welding was actually developed just before World War I, and believe it or not, all the equipment, tanks included, guns, everything that the Allies used in World War I were oxyacetylene welded. There was not stick welding. There was not MIG and TIG like we have today. They are very, very young forms of welding. And that is why I like oxyacetylene welding. Besides its elegance, I love the history of it. Second oldest form of welding known to man, forge welding being number one, the oldest, which of course is thousands of years old. This is the design of the boat so far. This is about as far as we got on, or gonna get on this video. I want to get one out because it's been a way too long since we got a double cabin cruiser video out for y'all, for those of y'all who like boats. Coming up next is going to be either Miss Moose or London Calling, and probably a little more on root beer. So those will be the videos that'll be coming out here next in the next few days. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I know there wasn't a lot of work into it. It's just I had to explain why I ended up where I was and why so long and where we're at today. So anyhow, that's about as far as we're going to get. I want to get this video out to y'all tonight. So I got to get my ass in the little shop and get editing and producing and get this video out. So no matter where y'all are in the world, please enjoy your weekend. I hope it's a nice weekend for y'all. Please stay safe, be happy, get out and enjoy the hobby. Get your RCs out, whether it be a boat, a crawler, a basher, or a planer, or a chopper, whatever y'all are into. Get them out and enjoy them. And think of us, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And again, we want to thank our subscribers for their ongoing support and for joining us on our journey here at YYC Designz Custom RC Creations. I am, of course, Twist, and y'all just watched the Double Cabin Cruiser project. Have a great weekend. Take care, guys and girls. Bye-bye.